G'day mates, it's B-Buster here, and I would like to give Anna Louisa a big shout out for sponsoring this episode. So, are you looking for the perfect gift for yourself or for someone special? Then Anna Louisa has you covered. Anna Louisa provides beautiful, sustainable jewelry that not only looks terrific, but also comes with a great price tag. And for my listeners, I managed to pick up an even better current deal with a discount of up to 25% off. Their jewelry starts at the affordable price of just $39 with no luxury markup, and I can attest to the quality. All you have to do is head to shop.analuisa.com/scared. I decided to get my missus a little something for her birthday this year, the willow necklace, and man was it the perfect gift. It's super lightweight, has a beautiful intricate design, and looks great with formal and casual wear. And most importantly, she loves it. The company also offset 100% of their carbon emissions, starting with the sourcing of their raw materials all the way to the disposal. Their shipping is excellent and comes with custom taxes included for international customers, and with up to 25% off to boot, you really cannot go wrong. You can also check them out by following their Instagram or by subscribing to their newsletters, in which they always offer perks for engaged customers. I absolutely recommend checking them out. Head to shop.analuisa.com/scared. I really love them. Their pieces start at $39 with sales up to 25% off. Get your holiday gift on shop.analuisa.com/scared. You can also find a link in the description with tonight's episode. So, it was a humid night in July when me and my 3 buddies were camping in a small quiet spot by a river. That night, alcohol and weed were flowing. It was around 12 a.m., maybe 1 a.m, when we were all just sort of cracking jokes and having a good time sitting around the fire, when one of my friends went quiet and had a weird look on his face. So I asked him what was up, thinking that he's not feeling alright or just needs to lay down, but he responded saying that he feels like somebody is watching us. So I told him that everything was going to be okay and just to relax, and if he wants he can sleep in the truck. Well, later that night we all went into our tents and I instantly passed out, but I was woken up by my friend that I was sharing the tent with. He was sitting up with his pocket knife out and open, so I asked him what was going on, and he replied with, "Just listen," which I did, and heard leaves crunching and branches breaking, and listening for a bit longer, it sounded like someone with boots was walking around outside. I got concerned because none of my friends brought or were wearing any boots, but after laying there for a while, the footsteps stopped right next to the tent and we saw a figure standing there. As we sat there trying to figure out what we should do, our best idea was to jump out of the tent and ambush the person. It sounded like a good idea at the time. So me and my buddy jumped out of the tent and were faced with a 6'5", 280-pound man, I would guess, with an unkempt beard and hair, and after standing in front of the man for a second, my friend just took off, running towards the truck, and me trying to follow. I crashed into the tent where my other 2 friends were sleeping. As I was laying on the ground in fear, I saw that the man was actually holding a machete, so I yelled, "Get the gun." We didn't actually have a gun, it was just a bluff. But well, my bluff worked, and the man dropped his machete and took off into the woods. We didn't hesitate, and we instantly picked up and got to the truck, and after going back to the house to calm down and get some more sleep, the next morning, we all went back to the spot fully armed, ready for anything. But once we got to the spot, we found the machete, and after following the tracks for a bit, we also found a small axe. And after seeing all of that, we all agreed to never go back to that spot or talk about what happened. So let me say first and foremost that I'm a man of logic and explanation. I've never believed in ghosts or other cryptic beings, really, in all my life, but something happened to me the other night that really made me feel weird. So, I live somewhere in between country and town here in Florida and see an abundance of wildlife. Foxes, coyotes, raccoons, all very normal to see. Since there being a large fox population around here too, and most people having chickens and whatnot, everyone has large dogs, including me. I have a 70-pound boy and a 60-pound girl pit bull. They're pretty much fearless too. They know this is their property and they protect it as such, alerting me if they hear something. And if they do, I open the door and they run out to chase off whatever it is. Now, the other night, I woke up randomly and it was disturbingly quiet outside, like not even a single cricket. And my dogs were not by my bed like they usually are. And all of a sudden, a howl like I'd never heard went off like a siren that sent a chill down my spine. Like a deep yell almost, but definitely from an animal. I turned the lights on in my house to see my pit bulls at the back of their dog crate shaking. I've never seen a look on my dog's face like that before, purely terrified. So I turned all the lights back off, grabbed a flashlight, and looked out my back window. What I saw, about 200 yards off a tree line near the back of my property, was what I can only describe as a dog thing. I vaguely saw it, but it was very similar to a hyena build with a large amount of fur on its neck, like a mane almost, and skinny back legs. Its head looked very wolf-like with erect ears and a large skull, and it was absolutely massive. It was so black that it was hard to make out distinct characteristics, but its presence scared basically any living thing that was around it. It seemed anyway that night. The next morning I went to the spot that I saw the animal, but saw no tracks or hair or anything. But I know what I saw, and I've never seen anything like that before. Has anyone in Florida seen anything like this? Well, we've been having a lot of dead dogs in the area, dogs that are large and are being killed by something. Other people think it's the coyotes or a feral dog, but I have to wonder if it's the thing that I saw. Just seeing my dog so terrified too, that really scares me. When I first bought my home last year, there was a family of around 13 people living in it, 6 of which were adults, 3 small bedrooms and 1 sketchy annex in the garage. A year later, and the neighborhood is still telling me stories about how awful these people were as neighbors. The annex room was initially shoddy framing and drywall work, presumably installed by that family. The walls were painted a weird sort of green color, and the rug was a wrinkly stained mess. It became apparent that someone had been peeing in all 4 corners of the room too. I figured it might just be pets, but there was a mirror that had "Please help me" written on it in makeup, and the room was actually locked from the outside. The day that we got our keys, I got called to respond to the Seattle riots with my National Guard unit, and was gone for about a month. During that time, my wife and the in-laws began renovating the home to make it livable. I felt guilty being unable to help, but it was what it was. My wife got together with my mum to convert that scary extra room into a man cave sort of jam room with all of my musical equipment and memorabilia. It came out really nice, but I haven't found much time to use it in the past year. A couple of months ago, I built a gaming PC and decided to set it up in that room. And now that I've been going in there almost daily, things have started to feel a little strange around the house. You see, I get this sensation someone is standing directly behind me once or twice a day in that room. Our TV was set on fire in the living room a few weeks ago. Our water main burst last weekend, causing us to dig our yard up over the course of 3 days, and my garage light keeps turning on and off. I can hear the light switch. It's not an auto one. This morning, I got up out of the shower to find out that my wife already left for work. I'm coming down the hall and I swear that I hear her clearly say, "Hey babe," from the spare room side of the house. I replied, "You're still here?" To which I got complete silence. I looked out the front window and, sure enough, her truck was gone. That's when I heard it again, though. "Babe, come here." At that, I grabbed my things and I just noped to work. When I was pulling up out of the driveway, I could hear what sounded like a girl screaming from outside, followed by a bang. I stopped before backing into the street, thinking, was that my phone? I waited for a second before continuing on my way, thinking that it might be the school across the street. I got about 50 feet down the road before I heard it again. This time it was faint, but sounded like it was coming from in the car with me. I paused at the stop sign and rolled down the windows to see if it would happen again, as it had sounded identical to the first one, but nothing. I rolled up my windows and continued on my way to find that it happened several more times, almost like a recording. Same scream, bang, over and over for another mile or so. Anyway, I'm weirded out for the day, and I don't know, I've never really done it before, but I might sage later and bang some pans together or something. I don't know. What do you guys think that I should do? So it was a beautiful Friday, and I was still somewhat fresh into my relationship with the love of my life. I had a week earlier decided to finally quit the nasty substances in my life, and had made it one whole week without using. How did my addict mind know how to celebrate? Well, get another bag, of course. We were spending the day hiking through the beautiful wooded areas. And what I didn't predict was just how far down my tolerance had gone, and I was getting progressively naughty, but wrote it off to my girl as just being sick. As the night began to wind down, we decided to get a fire going on this very remote hilltop, way out in the sticks, to just sit back and watch the stars. And while we're chilling there, we notice a car pull up, and while we were a little curious, it wasn't like it's private land or anything. We continue talking and cuddling up next to our fire, thinking maybe it's just some kids getting high or whatever. Next thing I know, I see this man appear out of the dark on the path. He's walking along looking like maybe he's going to a lookout area to watch some stars too. But as he passes, I greet him with a, "Hey, how's it going?" And the guy literally just stares at us without saying a word in return and walks past. The look on his face, though, was just borderline evil. No expression, just deadpan. It was very odd, but I'm a tough guy, so I'm not too worried. He walks past a bit later. It's a one-way in and out deal sort of thing, and gets into his truck to drive off. Or so we thought. Now, remember, I'm pretty faded, and the nods are getting me bad at this point. I'm going in and out of some dream world and was speaking out loud what I was experiencing in this said dream world, aka pretty high. But my girl starts to hear something rustling around in the trees and tries to alert me, but I'm just too faded at first to get what she's saying. But eventually she gets my attention, and as soon as I heard it, my adrenaline made me go from dopey to high alert. Now, I grew up in the woods, and I know how animals act and how they move and stuff. And this clearly was not an animal. It was making way too much noise, and when I tried to yell to scare it off, it would stop moving for a second. It felt like it was getting closer and closer, though, to the point where I grabbed a big log and began screaming at the woods, "Come on then, I know you're in there." And as I said that, whoever it was in there ran wildly, crashing through branches as they went. We decided at that point that it was best to just get out of there, so we packed up and walked out, log in hand for protection. And what we saw as we went out still freaks me out. So we saw that guy's same truck pulled down the road a ways into some trees. That creepy guy, whoever he was, tried to hide his truck to come and stalk us, and he was still out there somewhere, perhaps even watching as we were leaving. Needless to say, I was beyond freaked out at this point. We ran our butts out of there, and we didn't feel safe until we got home. When I think back on it, I really hope that he was just thinking that he had a peek of some potential action, but with how far out we were, anything could have happened. This was a major wake-up call for me, though, and I was incapacitated and unable to protect the fullest love of my life, and from there out, I had a few relapses, but that was the beginning of the end for me. For reference, too, I haven't touched anything in over a decade. In 2006, my mum, she went on an overnight business trip and brought something back with her. My parents were in the middle of a divorce, which meant that I think it was the perfect time for something to attach itself. The morning that she got back from the trip, she was telling us about all the creepy things that happened in her hotel room, and she had just told us that the TV kept turning on when all of a sudden our stereo turned on at full blast. We all sat there in shock, just sort of looking at each other before my brother got up to turn it off. We immediately stopped talking about it and went on about our day. And for the next 4 years, we would all experience odd happenings, but they were always small enough that we could write them off as something else. That was until 2010, when my mum moved into a new house that had just been built. So right off the bat, we all noticed just how dark this house was. It could be a sunny summer day and the inside of the house would look dark and just bleak. The ghostly happenings in that house initially started with my brother. His room was situated in the front of the house, just next to the formal living room, which we used as a computer room. He would tell my mum and my sister that he would wake up in the early hours of the morning to the sound of someone typing on the computer. When we would get up to check, the monitor would be on, but there would be no one at the computer. One night in particular, he woke up to the sound of typing, went out to investigate, and saw the monitor was on again, but this time the chair was spinning in a sort of slow circle, as if someone had gotten up and walked away in a hurry. When he told my mum the next morning, she assured him that it must have been a dream and to just ignore it if he's ever woken up again by it. He listened to her advice, and the computer stopped turning on in the middle of the night for a while, but it started up again a couple of months later, and this time it was accompanied by something else. This was when my brother saw a full-body apparition. He told me years later that he saw what he thought was me standing in his doorway one night. He said that he opened his eyes, saw me standing there, and told me to go back to sleep. When he opened his eyes again, he saw me crouching down by his bedside at eye level, staring at him. He quickly sat up in bed, rubbed the sleep out of his eyes, looked around the room, and saw that he was now completely alone. He got up sort of in disbelief, walked over to my room, and apparently saw me fast asleep in my own bed. It was that night that he left the house, and he never stayed past 8 o'clock again. But once this thing had driven my brother away, it seemed to target my sister as well. She recalls experiencing similar things. She'd see my brother or me crouching at her bedside or in her doorway, and she would hear cabinets in the kitchen opening and closing. She woke up one morning to a package of Oreos sitting open on the counter with all the cookies smashed to bits, and she had been home alone that night, so there was just no explanation as to who did it. None of this scared her, though, and she didn't experience anything besides those few occurrences. But this is when I started to experience strange things. At the time, I was 10 years old, and I had no idea what had been happening to my brother and sister in our house. They didn't want to scare me. For me, though, it started by seeing shadow people in the hallway, multiple times a day, too, and the kitchen cabinets would always be open, even if no one had been in the kitchen all day. But then one night, I saw it. It was a normal school night, and I was lying in my mum's bed reading a book. Her bedroom had its own bathroom attached with 2 sinks, with 2 huge round mirrors facing the doorway that connected the 2 rooms, with her bed facing the door. And as I was reading my book, I got the sudden urge to look up and into the mirror on the right side of her bathroom. And what I saw haunts me to this day. At first glance, I honestly thought that it was my brother, so I looked away, but that's when I remembered that my brother had, left an hour ago. My eyes shot back up to the mirror, and I got a good look at what was looking back at me in the reflection of the mirror. It was tall and it had a big mess of hair plopped on top of its head. Its skin was grey and its face had no features. It had no nose. In place of its eyes, it had two sort of gaping black holes. It had no lips, and in place of those was a black hole as well. I sat there staring at it for what must have been a couple of seconds, and even though it had no eyes, I just knew that it was looking at me. Well, I screamed and threw the blankets over my head, pleading for my mum in my fit of terror. She came running in and pulled the blankets off of me and asked me what happened. I was shaking as I told her what I saw, and I remember seeing fear just grow in her eyes as she looked over her shoulder into the bathroom. To ease my mind, she told me that it was common for mirrors to play tricks on people's eyes and that I was probably imagining it because of the book that I was reading. We did move out a few months after that incident, and I haven't experienced anything like that since I lived there. To this day, I have no idea who or what was tormenting us for the years that we lived there, and maybe we'll never know, but I'm just glad that it didn't follow us.